1, 2, 3, start. I was pretty excited when this tank arrived from Banggood for me to review. So the first thing I did was charge up the battery and take it for a bit of a spin. Now unfortunately, after just a very short time, stopped working properly. It would turn round and round, but it wouldn't go forward or backwards. So I've put in a clip to show you the symptoms. I've decided that rather than cry about this, I will get busy and open it up, see what's inside it and see if there's anything to be done. And I'll notify Banggood and see what their suggestion is. But I won't just sit here waiting for them to send parts. I will see what's inside, see what I can tell you, see what you can see about how this thing has been put together. Now a quick examination shows that it looks as though there are 8 screws that hold the top and bottom of this together. One there, and there. So I'm going to start by taking those out. Now I've taken all the screws out and I've put them for safekeeping in my magnetic holder down there. And I recommend that if you're ever pulling something like this apart in this way, you do the same. Keep the screws and any other parts that come out, keep them carefully. Make sure that if there are different sorts of screws, you keep the separate sorts apart and remember where they came from. These ones are all the same and I think that's good, but the other thing you should do, I think, is take photos as you go so that you can see where parts were when you got it. So we'll open it up. As I thought, the top just comes off with those 8 screws, and we can see in here that there is a board. This will be the receiver board and the board that provides the power to the motor, or motors. In fact, I think there are 2 in this one. And we can, if we wish, separate things out, but I'll just leave it like that for the moment. Have a closer look. There's some kind of very big gearbox here. That is obviously the thing that drives these tracks through this pulley here at the back. So we'll go ahead and take it apart a bit further, see what happens. Alright, I think that the problem that was shown in the video means that most probably something in this big gearbox assembly here is broken. So I'm going to separate that out. Now I can see that there are 2 sets of connectors going from the board into here, and I'm guessing that there's one going to the motor on top and then there's another motor below. And so I'll take a photograph and take these connectors off here, and then I'll find which screws hold this gearbox on and take the whole lot out. Just removing these plugs. Okay, got these 2 plugs out. You can't mix them up, they're different. Now I've had a closer examination here and I think I've identified the screws that hold this gearbox in. I'm going to take this rear bumper out because it just gets in the way. I'll put it back later. It looks as though there might be 6 screws or 8 screws that hold this thing in, and I'll take those ones out and see if this thing comes free. But I think also it'll be necessary to take the tracks off, so I think I'll have a look at the tracks first. Looks as though it's not too hard to take these off because there are devices here that keep the track tightened up automatically, and if you slacken them off you can take the tracks off. So I'll do that. Now it turned out that there are only actually four screws holding in this gearbox, and they are there, and there, and there. And once you've got those out, the thing comes free. And there it is, it's out. And this is where the mechanical magic happens, I believe. Now, I've put the 4 screws separately into the magnetic holder, but it does look as though they're identical to the other screws anyway, the other 8 screws that held the top and bottom together. So I'm beginning to like the way this thing is put together. It's simple, it's easy, it's modular. I noticed too that Banggood has lots of parts for these on its website. And so this gearbox is available, that board is available, lots of other parts are available. So here we have this gearbox, and I'm wondering what it is in here that is broken that has caused the problem. So I think I won't be able to hold myself back from trying to pull this thing apart and have a look inside, although Banggood have already agreed to send me a spare gearbox. Okay, I've got further now. I've been able to, by removing 3 screws, I've been able to take the lid off this part of the gearbox to expose a complicated lot of gears here, and this was would be where you definitely want to take photos so you could put it back together the way it was. It looks as though this motor here is the motor that causes the rotation of it. In other words, it causes the tracks to move independently so that it can turn. And there is another motor underneath that these wires are going to, that is the one that causes us to go forward and backwards, and so I think it's the one that's underneath that has caused my problems with this tank. But it doesn't seem to be possible to get at the one underneath without first taking this one off. So there's a bit of complexity here. Make sure you have photos, make sure you don't lose any parts, I think would be the answer here if you go this far. The alternative would be just simply to say, well, I'm not going to do that stuff. I'm going to wait for a spare gearbox to arrive from Banggood. But I've got a feeling I will have to take the gearbox apart anyway to get these pieces off. So I'm going to go further and explore a little bit more. Now, while I've got it apart to this state, it's worth pointing out that suppose you had this car and it was broken, and the only thing that was broken was this here motor, then once you've got to this stage, it's easy to remove this motor and you just simply put another one in, the replacement one in where that one is. And yes, the part is available separately from Banggood. Alright, I'm learning as I go here. I had some difficulty getting the gearbox apart, so I have instead taken a different tack. I put the cover back on the piece of the gearbox that I had pulled apart, but I was unable to get the bottom part apart, so I'm investigating further here by taking a wheel off first. Now, the wheel is held together with 3 screws, and I've taken those off, but I didn't have to. There is also a screw that goes down the middle and into this plastic piece here. After I'd taken that screw off, I still couldn't get the wheel off, so I thought it was necessary to undo these screws in the wheel, but actually it's not. But you do have to put your screwdriver in here and prise the wheel off, and that's what I did. That's how I got it off. And as you can see, it's got a hexagonal thread, a hexagonal shape there that fits into the corresponding shape on the wheel. So that's how you get the wheels off. Where that will lead me, not exactly sure yet, but we'll soon find out. Demonstration of removing this other wheel by prising it off the screwdriver. I've already removed the screw that was in the end of it, and off it comes. So now we have the gearbox completely separated, and when you look at it on the Banggood website, the part looks just like this. So I think this is everything, or I'm not sure whether it comes with the motors in or whether you have to buy them separately. The picture on Banggood shows this motor already installed, but whether that is correct or not, I'm not sure. Okay, I've come to the conclusion that you're not really supposed to open up the bottom of this gearbox. And I think the reason is that this tank is supposed to be somewhat waterproof, at least up to 50. You're supposed to be able to drive it through 50 millimeters of water without destroying it. And I think for that reason the bottom of the gearbox is very well sealed, and I'm just not sure that it's possible, at least for us amateurs, to open it up without destroying that waterproof seal. I think the top part is deliberately made openable separately so that you can replace this motor, but the bottom motor probably has to come with the gearbox, I'm guessing. So at this stage I'm going to stop and I'm going to wait for the parts to arrive from Banggood, and then I'll report again. Now I'm just going to reiterate before I put this back together completely again, this gearbox, what there is to know about this, what I think you should know. As I say, I think it is fair enough to take off the top of this part of the gearbox, which is held on by 4 screws. Now inside here, because I wanted to take off the bottom as well, there are 2 more screws. One is there and one is over there, and those need to be replaced before you can put the lid back on this top part of the gearbox. So I'm just doing that. I put that one back in already. Now you must make sure that everything is seated here exactly as it was when you opened it up, because these little axles come straight out of the gears and they fit into little recesses, and if any of that is not right back in place correctly when you put it back together again, I don't think you'll be able to get this cover to go on. The motor's in the right place there. There are then, as well as those 2 screws that are in there, there are 4 screws that go here that hold this top gearbox cover on, and so I'm going to put those back in. Then I'm going to put it aside, making sure I'm saving everything carefully, not losing anything. The 2 screws that hold on the wheels are in their sockets there already, so I don't lose them. There's 8 screws to hold the 2 halves together, and the rest of the screws are for what I've been doing, so I'll leave it at that. So now I have the gearbox completely reassembled. The only screws I have left now are the 8 screws that held the top onto the bottom of the tank, and the 4 screws that hold this gearbox into its position at the back of the tank. I've now put everything back in its box for later when the parts arrive.